What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and let's talk about Madam Web. Specifically, let's talk about what they're gonna do with Madam Web, because if I'm being honest with you guys, I think Madam Web is gonna be the antithesis to Null the symbiote god. She's gonna be a multiversal character. So, first things first, right? A lot of people are kind of pissed off because apparently Dakota Johnson being cast as Madam Web seems to fly in the face of who they expected, basically like an old blind woman. I imagine a lot of people probably feel that way because when they learned that Madam Web was gonna get a solo film, they Googled Madam Web, saw it was an old blind woman, and then just, got mad on Twitter because Twitter loves to be angry. Here's the thing, taking that Google search one step further, you actually end up learning there's two Madam Webs, or there have been two Madam Webs. So let's talk about the first one, right? Cassandra Webb. So Cassandra Webb appeared way back in Amazing Spider-Man number 210 back in 1980. And in reality, she was more interesting in Spider-Man the Animated Series than she's ever been in the comics. But in effect, she suffered from a degenerative muscle disease that basically made it impossible for her to be able to move and even really just survive on her own. So her late husband ended up building a machine that literally looks like a giant spider's web that she would just be connected to. She would just sit there and it just kept her alive. But she served as a kind of seeress, right? Given her psychic ability, she served as a sort of guide of sorts to Peter Parker, but was never really that interesting in the comic books, if I'm being honest with you guys. Now take that discussion of Cassandra Webb and table it for a second, which FYI, we'll do like an actual Madam Web explained video on Comics Explained sometime this week, but table that explanation, kind of sit on the back burner for a second, and let's talk about Julia Carpenter, who's cool, I guess. So Julia Carpenter was originally part of the Secret Wars event from back in 1984. When she first popped up, you didn't really know anything about her. You didn't know how she got there, where she was from. And Spider-Man was like, it's weird that your outfit looks like mine. She's like, yeah, I'm a Spider-Woman, right? But you end up fast forwarding to her solo series, and what you find out is she's friends with a woman named Valerie Cooper. Now, those of you guys who are familiar with comics, you know who Valerie Cooper is. If you're not, Valerie Cooper had her hands in a lot of really shady things when it came to like mutants and superheroes and things like that. But with regards to this discussion here, she was part of a group called the Commission on Superhuman Activities. So as an example of some of this stuff that the Commission did, a lot of you guys saw Falcon and the Winter Soldier, right? And you saw that like John Walker had basically replaced Sam Wilson as Captain America, and that led to everything kind of popping off, even though really Sam Wilson was the one that let it happen because he refused to take up the shield. That's based on the storyline that initially saw John Walker becoming Captain America in Marvel Comics. The way that worked is the Commission actually fired Steve Rogers because they argued that the Captain America shield and the uniform and all that stuff is property of the federal government. So they can decide who plays the role of Captain America and who doesn't. Now, of course, they basically brought in John Walker, guy lost his mind, they canned him and brought Steve Rogers back, right? So that's really how that works. But that's the kind of stuff the Commission did. One of the other things the Commission wanted to do was basically create their own superheroes. And so what ended up happening is because Valerie Cooper and Julia Carpenter were friends in college, Valerie Cooper approached Julia Carpenter to ask her if she wanted to be part of like a kind of experiment of sorts. And Julia Carpenter was like, yeah, sure, whatever. So they ended up exposing her to like spider venom and some weird, herbs and stuff. They gave her LSD and she ended up developing like superpowers, right? Now, the big difference between Julia Carpenter and Spider-Man is that Julia Carpenter shoots psychic webbing, whereas Spider-Man uses like physical webbing. Just one of the many differences between those characters, if I'm being honest. Now, having said that, the paths of these two characters, Cassandra Webb and Julia Carpenter, cross paths during a story that was known as The Grim Hunt. The Grim Hunt was a story that came out in 2010 and was basically a sequel to like Kraven's Last Hunt. And basically the family of Kraven the Hunter wanted to get rid of Spider-Man. And so they ended up kidnapping a whole bunch of members of the Spider family, which included Madam Web, Cassandra Webb. And so during this whole storyline, basically Cassandra Webb died, but before she did, she passed on her powers to Julia Carpenter, and Julia Carpenter became the new Madam Web. Having said that, I mean, she's done some stuff, which is cool, sort of, but not really. But that's how she ended up becoming Madam Web. Now, why does this matter? Well, to be honest with you guys, first things first, I do not want to see a movie with an old blind woman sitting in a chair by herself. That movie sounds boring as hell. I guess we could get an actual origin, which would be way beyond what we got in the comics. But here's the thing, Julia Carpenter makes a lot more sense for a variety of reasons. The first is because, say for example, they did go with Cassandra Webb. They went with an old blind woman. Well, the most logical choice for somebody like that would be like Judi Dench or somebody like Helen Mirren or whatever. The problem is longevity. You might get 2 movies out of her and then that's it. Whereas if you hire someone like Dakota Johnson to play Julia Carpenter, you can get a ton of movies out of her, right? At least 15 years worth of movies out of her, which kind of seems to be about the standard, right? To be honest, 10 to 15 15 years worth of movies from various people. Tom Holland is, said he's more or less kind of done playing Spider-Man. I don't really know how they reconcile that with the ending of Spider-Man No Way Home. Robert Downey Jr. played Iron Man for about 10 years or so. Chris Evans played Captain America for about the same amount of time. Of course, Hugh Jackman played Wolverine for like 17 years. So I would say on average between 10 to 15 years in terms of actors playing a particular role in movie form in the comic book landscape, or at least the comic book movie landscape. So in that way, it makes more sense to hire Dakota Johnson to play Julia Carpenter. More so than that though, I think that there's a much bigger thing going on here than just a Madam Web film. If what they wanted to do was make a movie focused on Julia Carpenter, portrayed by Dakota Johnson, basically becoming Spider-Woman, they would have just called it that. They would have been like, Spider-Woman, starring Julia Carpenter, played by Dakota Johnson, coming soon from Sony, right? I mean, they would have just left it that way, but they called it Madam Web. What I think they're doing here is they're building Madam Web up into what will eventually become a kind of multiversal character, right? Somebody who is the antithesis to Null the Symbiote God. Now, here's the reason why I say that. Sony and Marvel have recently said that they are working on a series, or at least maybe a trilogy of films, however many films they end up making, that feature Null the Symbiote God, right? The guy who created the symbiotes. This makes sense. Null is a multiversal character. We know that Null is a multiversal character because in the second Venom film, when the symbiote was talking to Tom Hardy, like when they were teleported into the MCU, the Venom symbiote recognized Peter Parker Spider-Man. The reason why they're there is because the Venom symbiote knows that Peter Parker's Spider-Man. The reason the Venom symbiote knows Peter is Spider-Man is because Topher Grace got the Venom symbiote in Sam Raimi's Spider-Man 3, and Topher Grace knew that Peter Parker was Spider-Man. The symbiotes share a hive mind. So what one symbiote knows in one universe, the other symbiotes know in every other universe, right? We know that because when the symbiote was talking to Eddie Brock, it was like you couldn't possibly comprehend something like 80 billion years across the history of the multiverse. I'm using 80 billion as a ballpark. I don't remember if that was the exact number. Basically, a huge amount of time across the entirety of the multiverse, you couldn't possibly comprehend that much information, right? So it would make sense if you look at the entirety of like the Spider-Man movies we've been getting up to this point, right? Remove the villains, remove like Michael Morbius, and remove like Adrian Toomes, right? And trying to figure out where does Michael Morbius take place and all that kind of stuff. Remove all of that, right? Just look at the Spider-Man movies since really the introduction of Tom Holland into the MCU as Spider-Man, right? Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Far From Home, and Spider-Man No Way Home. It's a 3-movie origin story. We didn't know that until we got to No Way Home, but it's a 3-movie origin story. Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, the origin of Miles Morales, and to a degree, the origins of the other characters who appeared in there. Spider-Man Beyond the Spider-Verse, the origin of Miguel O'Hara, Spider-Man 2099, and whatever other variations of Spider-Man will exist in that particular movie, assuming they choose to give us one. What we're getting here from Sony and largely from the Marvel Cinematic Universe is a building up of the Spider-Man character, Spider-Man mythos, across the entirety of the multiverse. What better way to have all that build up and lead into a great big huge kind of event than in some kind of a post-credit scene or some moment in a movie or something like that, following the Madam Web solo film, where basically she brings like Tom Holland and Miles Morales, maybe a couple others together, and says like, you guys need to go find the Spider-Man from across the multiverse because Null is coming back and he is a threat unlike anything you've ever faced before. And we need as many Spider-Man from across the multiverse as we can possibly get. You want to add a little icing on the cake, have the forces of Null basically play the role of the inheritors from Spider-Verse, that the forces of Null are traveling across the multiverse, killing Spider-Man. And so Madam Web's like, we have to do something about this, right? We got to bring all these Spider-Men together and find a way to stop Null and his forces or whatever it is. It's not that impractical, especially coming out of No Way Home when you had Andrew Garfield, Tobey, and Tom all basically hanging out together, coming together, right? I think that's a taste of what we're going to end up seeing, that they're probably going to end up coming back as Spider-Man. I wouldn't be surprised if we got like an Amazing Spider-Man 3 for like Andrew Garfield, and they're like, yeah, man, like this Madam Web and everything all ties into it, right? I wouldn't be surprised if that was the case, if that was what was really going on here, that Madam Web is less about Julia Carpenter and us being introduced to a new Spider-Woman and more about them building up this just colossal multiversal threat that is Null, the symbiote god. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and yeah, I will catch you all later. Peace.